Ukrainian defense minister. He's now the chairman of the Center for Defense Strategies and a distinguished fellow at the Atlantic Council. Thanks so much for being here with us. So when this armed insurrection was taking place, as we just heard, there seemed to be plenty of Ukrainians happy at the prospect of Russians fighting Russians. What's the mood now?
It was quite surreal from the beginning yesterday because very few people expected that it will take such a rapid turn. And also it was very unclear what Prigozhin's realistic endgame was. So I don't think we had too many expectations yesterday, and that's why today we're just watching the situation, how it unfolds. I don't think that's the end of the story for Prigozhin, because first of all, he needs to learn what we all know, that Putin doesn't honor any agreements. Secondly, obviously, Putin will consider this as a threat, so there will be some continuation of that story. Also, we were quite shocked with the low level of readiness of the troops inside Russia, because the rebel forces could move all along the country almost without stopping. And the only reason it didn't escalate further is because Prigozhin decided to de-escalate. And finally, we clearly see the demise of the Wagner as an independent force on our front line. I mean, they will either disintegrate or they will be joining Russian regular forces, which means that they will stop existing as the independent facility. And we have to say that the only reasonable, or the only even minor success of Russians over the last year was attributed specifically to that group. So there would be some changes, obviously, in the Russian armed forces and in the Ukrainian battlefront very soon.
Yeah, well, let's dig into that a bit more. The loss of the Wagner forces, if that comes to pass, if they're integrated into the regular Russian military, there's that angle. There's also perhaps a loss of morale for the Russian troops. How do you think all of this might change the war on the battlefield right now?
Wagner had a very distinctively different doctrine comparing to the Russian regular forces. Right now, they will be integrated into the standard units. They will be part of the chain of command. Russian generals will obviously be considering them immediately as a threat and as something like some alien forces inside their own. So I don't think they will be able to be as effective as they were before. Their efficiency rate before was attributed mainly to the very brutal tactic, even for Russians, to send groups of them to die and then replace the others and die again, and so on and so on. But this tactic was quite difficult to deal with. Now Russian forces will use them as a standard infantry troops, and basically there will be continuation of the Russian way of doing this war as a regular force.
And you touched on this sentiment. I want to ask you directly, I mean, is there a risk that this challenge to Putin, this humiliation, might make him lash out even more at Ukraine to try to demonstrate strength?
I don't think he has any reserves to do that. I think he's at the maximum of his capacity. Whatever he could do before, he already tried. So I think that possibilities for escalation for Putin are very limited right now. And we have seen that by the way that how they kind of went for all resources and try to pull together the forces in order to deal with Prigozhin. They didn't have much of reserves inside Russia, so that means that also that the escalation potential for Russia for Ukraine is also very, very limited, if there is one at all.
Now, even though the insurrection might be over, Prigozhin exposing the fiction surrounding the rationale for the war that's been so costly for Russia. What effect do you think that might have, undermining the soldiers on the battlefield, but also undermining perhaps support for the war back home in Russia?
Any conflict between the same side, between the forces within the same side, is extremely damaging for morale. That's clear. So when Russians are fighting against Russians, I mean, obviously that damages morale significantly. We don't see right now what we call a revolution potential in Russia. I don't think that it's as bad as in 1917, as Putin said in his speech, because indeed at that time there was everybody was against everybody. There were groups, armies fighting each other, etc. I don't think we have that situation in Russia right now, but certainly this is extremely dangerous sign. So the country which fights the war needs to be united, and Russia is definitely not united, and we saw that yesterday.
Andrei Zagorodnyuk, thank you so much for your expertise. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.